day, and thank you for joining me for this session where we're looking at food designed to feed the human gut microbiota. My name is Gabrielle Jackson. I am a registered dietitian as well as a regulatory consultant for FACTS. I'm going to be having a look at prebiotics and why they should not be overshadowed by probiotics for gut health. So starting off with what is the gut microbiome, we need to understand the gut microbiome is described as the collection of microorganisms, including bacteria and fungi, as well as the environment in which they live in the gut or digestive tract. Every single person's gut microbiome is different, so we don't have a set standard for the gut microbiome. Every person is different. And there are a number of different factors which affect the health of the gut microbiome. Some of them that we look at are specifically the diet. If a diet is specifically high or low in certain foodstuffs, if it's very low in fiber, very high in refined carbohydrates, it's going to affect the gut microbiome. Very high stress levels can affect the gut microbiome. Lifestyle factors such as exercise will affect the gut microbiome, and the use of certain medications, things like antibiotics, can negatively impact the microorganisms in your gut microbiome. Why are we talking about gut health? Why is it becoming this sort of big focus and this big trend? We're seeing that it's increasing in consumer focus, and consumers are very often looking for alternative diets and foodstuffs to support their general immune health. And part of that is the gut health. There are a number of different terms and claims that we hear being used more frequently surrounding gut health. Things like the gut-brain axis, how your gut microbiome positively affects your brain chemistry. Looking at things like the composition and diversity of the microbiome. It's not just about how much, but it's about the diversity, the number of different types of microorganisms in your gut microbiome. A lot of patients coming through more and more recently with irritable bowel syndrome that they've been diagnosed with, and very often they don't actually know what it is, what causes it, and how they need to change their diet and their lifestyle to improve their symptoms, such as abdominal distension. And we're also seeing food intolerances become talked about more and more frequently, and finding that sometimes a poor gut microbiome has a negative impact on the body's ability to tolerate certain foodstuffs. There are a number of different biotics which are used for modulation. We very often talk about prebiotics and probiotics, and those are terms that most people will know quite well. Symbiotics is a combination of pre and probiotics, and then the new kids on the block are postbiotics and paraprobiotics. Together, all of these biotics are used for a comprehensive and holistic approach to lifestyle wellness. I'm going to be focusing a little bit more on pre and probiotics because those are the terms more frequently used and more commonly known. So let's have a look at a side-by-side comparison of prebiotics and probiotics. Prebiotics are described as being the substrate which is selectively utilized by the host's microorganism, which confers a health benefit. Sources of prebiotics include foodstuffs such as chicory, leeks, asparagus, onion, oats, and a number of other food sources, and they are naturally occurring compounds in these food products. The mechanism of action, or what they actually do in the body to be beneficial, is that they act as a carbohydrate source for fermentation, and they encourage probiotic growth. So prebiotics are the food stuff that feed our probiotics. Probiotics are the non-pathogenic microorganisms which, when ingested, exert a positive influence on the host's health or physiology. Very often, probiotics are taken into the diet, into the body through supplementation, but there are certain foods such as yogurt, kombucha, and a couple of other types of fermented foods that naturally contain some probiotics. And the mechanism of action, the way that probiotics work, it stimulates the host's defense mechanism and enhances the immune system. So very clear distinction between what a prebiotic is and a probiotic. The difference is that probiotics do not make prebiotics. However, prebiotics assist in the growth of your probiotics. So let's have a look a little bit more on what are prebiotics. How are they actually defined? There are 3 criteria which are required for a foodstuff to become defined as a prebiotic. So the first thing is it needs to be resistant to gastric acidity and hydrolysis by mammalian enzymes and GI absorption. They can be fermented by intestinal microflora, and they selectively stimulate the growth and or activity of intestinal bacteria associated with health and well-being, also known as probiotics. Currently, if we have a look at what our regulations say when it comes to making claims on foodstuffs, because let's be honest, the reason why we are interested in prebiotics and probiotics and putting them into our products is so that we can make claims, so that consumers will purchase the products. Currently, the regulations relating to labeling and advertising of foodstuffs, R146, has got no nutrient content claims permitted for novel fibers, and your novel fibers are things such as inulin, which is in actual fact a prebiotic, and there are no specific prebiotic claims permitted. The Medicines and Related Substances Act, which also falls under the mandate of the Department of Health, does not include prebiotics in the schedules. And that's very important because it means that prebiotics are not necessarily going to be considered to be a complementary medicine or a health supplement. Probiotics, as things currently stand, R146 does not permit any claims for probiotics, and the Medicines and Related Substances Act schedules probiotics as a Schedule 0 medicine. This is very important because if you've got a scheduled medicine and you are wanting to add it into a foodstuff, you're going to start running into some problems in terms of whether your product still remains being a foodstuff or if the product itself then starts becoming a complementary medicine. The draft regulation R429 proposed certain changes, and one of those changes is claims surrounding prebiotics. So just to have a look at what R429 says, the first thing to look at is always the definition. So the definition in R429 says that prebiotics are, or novel fibers, remember I said novel fibers, you're not allowed to make claims currently. Prebiotics must be resistant to hydrolysis by mammalian enzymes. All of a sudden, this is ringing bells because I've already said to you that the criteria for a prebiotic being a criteria includes resistance to hydrolysis, and it needs to confer benefits upon the host's well-being and health. So you can see that there's a direct link between what I've already said to you from a scientific standpoint is what makes a prebiotic, and what the definition in the regulation says. The draft includes a content claim for prebiotic, and that claim says in order to make a content claim about any prebiotic, the foodstuff shall have at least 2 milligrams of pure prebiotic per single serving, and the single serving is for solids and for liquids. Prebiotics can be any one or a combination of any of those prebiotics. So it can be inulin, it can be a fructooligosaccharide, it can be any of those. The regulation also has got these sort of statements or claims that can be made for prebiotics. So you've got your more generic statements, prebiotics such as whatever beneficially affects the intestinal flora by selectively stimulating the growth of good or beneficial gut flora or microorganisms, or positively affects the intestinal health. And an average of 6 grams of prebiotics is needed daily for general digestive health, which is really important because it's your generic, essentially, education to the consumers. The draft also has got a teeny tiny little section for probiotic claims, but only for function claims in yogurt and only for specific bacteria in yogurt. So all of a sudden you can start to see that prebiotics, apart from the fact that you're not going to be stepping on the Medicines and Related Substances Act sort of toes, you've also got much more scope in terms of making claims when you're looking at using prebiotics in your foodstuffs as opposed to only probiotics. So you've got a number of different opportunities for prebiotics in the NPD process. Foods which naturally contain ingredients which are naturally high in prebiotics you've already got the prebiotics in there, you could potentially test them and make claims. There's certain naturally occurring prebiotics which can be extracted and used in the enrichment of foodstuffs. And sometimes those food ingredients have got other benefits. And I'm going to have a look at a few of those now. And then lastly, please remember, based on the publication of the draft regulations, there may be specific claims which are permitted, but it is only a draft. So currently there are no claims permitted, but the draft proposes certain claims which would be permitted on prebiotics. So I did say that I'd touch on a few examples. Things like green banana flour has got a high content of prebiotics. It also has a positive effect on the texture or mouthfeel of a product, and it doesn't have a very strong banana flavor. So it's quite a nice ingredient to use in your product development if you're using it for enrichment. Orange sweet potato flour, again, it's going to not just add to your prebiotics, it's also going to add vitamins such as vitamin A, as well as potentially a really beautiful color to your final product. And something like apple puree can be used, again, not only is it going to add to your prebiotics, but it's also going to add flavor and sweetness to your product through different means than using sugars to make your product more palatable. So when you're looking at your prebiotic ingredients, you've got a naturally occurring component of a foodstuff. It's a food ingredient. You don't have any of the potential risks that you run with probiotics, and there is going to be huge potential for prebiotics going forward because of the fact that you don't have the so-called regulatory gray areas which you need to navigate around. Thank you so much. I hope that you will have some questions for me, and thank you to my team for assisting me in putting this presentation together.